Hi everyone, just wanted to do a sort of a sequel video to the previous video that I posted, which was on some of the pitfalls of online engagement, the online coaching industry, and the difficulty in navigating there and figuring out who's for real, where are people in integrity, and where are they constructing false facades of who they are, and how to detect that. So I think that's a very useful tool that's going to continue to be needed and accompany us in our forward movement as we engage with these types of entities in the metasphere. So basically, I loved the comments that I received. You know, I got a lot of engagement. It felt like, wow, this is worthwhile doing and continuing and going deeper. Thank you very much. One of the comments was talking about, well, you know, there's some bad apples, but there's a lot of good apples. So let's not just be imbalanced in critiquing this. Personally, I feel that, as I mentioned, it's a $20 billion industry. That feels a little bit excessive. It feels like a big bubble, and it's mushroomed in the last 2 years when, of course, we had lockdowns and inability to go to our physical jobs and things like that, and needed some distraction and relief, and a lot of people were going through depressive states and miserable and needed to reach out to others. So I think the online coaching industry has exploded, particularly in those last 2 years, but also before that it was growing as part of the selfie culture and sort of the Instagram personalities and the influencer movement and all that. We've been watching it grow for a long time, and now everything has merged into like one sphere. I mean, it's hard to tell if someone is making a personal post or if they're actually selling a product, or if they're doing pre-marketing for a program. You know, they're posting something deeply personal and meaningful, and then it's followed by a sales pitch. I can't parcel out these examples, like they're just in my feed. You know, I wish I could filter my feed and there was like one place for sales and marketing and another place where I really can hear what people think. But unfortunately, these spaces have merged, and I find that to be very challenging. You know, even some of my friends are engaging in this because they have online businesses. And because of that, we've also entered this excessive time of political correctness. We don't want to offend anybody because it's going to hit the wallet. You know, we can't really say what we think because there's going to be repercussions in our businesses, right? So these are some things that are obvious. Let me get to the less obvious things. Why I feel it's a $20 billion industry? Well, there must be people needing guidance and people feeling miserable, and there's a vacuum. Like, people are not finding the right guides in their local community, within their inner circle, within their family and friends, and they're more willing to go and, you know, offload their issues on someone who is a neutral coach online that seems to represent some kind of missing piece for them. So it's a very attractive space because one can reinvent themselves overnight, and there's always going to be people to receive that new identity, you see. So the possibility for renewal and reinventing itself is magnified and accelerated in the online space. It's also a very low bar to enter. Like, there's no prerequisites, there's no screening of people's, you know, abilities or credentials or past history. You know, you can create a new profile, a new page, and here you go. You manifest a new project, you create money out of thin air. It's a very quick cycle to get reimbursed. You create an online course, and there's no one to verify that, really. And also, there isn't a lot of emphasis placed on verification to start with. It's sort of like, oh, that's so yesterday, like your resume and your CV and your education. We're all unschooling because it's all conditioning and has no validity and no meaning. And it's like, okay, part of that is true, but part of it is like, now we're in this wild west of truth making where anything goes. Everything is highly subjectivized, and there's no balance, there's no mediation. It's sort of like, I can proclaim to be whoever I am, and you're meant to believe me, and if I have enough followers to support that, that means that's truly who I am. And since we don't have face-to-face contact with these people, there's no way of knowing if they're actually building this fallacious reality and this fake identity. So other than the low bar of entry, I think it's also a space that magnetizes the narcissistic in us. And what I mean by that is I feel we're all partially narcissistic, and these qualities are highly encouraged in that medium. I mean, in real life, if you were to go out and meet some people face to face, you know, you may get a compliment or two on your looks or how smart you are, or a comment you make, 5, 10 if you're lucky in a day. But man, in the online space, you just get so much validation, so many clicks and comments and likes and loves, and it's really has the potential to inflate the spiritualized egos and people that already have a pre-existing narcissistic tendency. Also, just because something is happening online doesn't mean that it is not subject to the same physical laws of energy. I mean, you get energy. Like, I'm very aware that I will be receiving energy and your attention, and I will be heard and seen. So that is something that we're seeking, to feel more validated, more powerful, to feel that we matter in the world. So it enhances our self-worth. So yeah, that's very narcissistic in its nature. And also something that I wanted to mention is that what seems to be creeping in as an archetype with a lot of the coaches and the healers is sort of what I kind of coined that term, by the way. I haven't heard it used by anyone else. It's the unhealed healer. Coaching is essentially a healing space where transformation takes place. So the people that end up in that profession have a pre-existing story of trauma or a big rite of passage. So they're very eager to share that story online, and sometimes they're very eager to jump to conclusions that then now they have the capacity to hold space for others who are going through similar ordeals. And sometimes that's a very premature conclusion, I feel. So you're sort of getting a parade of all these stories of trauma, affliction, and overcome illness and everything. And then a few months later, you know, someone can become the expert in that field. It's good to try to question, you know, how long of a seasoning process is required for someone to truly hold space for another. Just because we've had a profound personal experience does not mean that we're equipped. And a lot of the times the traumas are still very acute and alive in the one that is hoping to help others. Even if they're having an altruistic motivation, they need the experience. They need the life experience. They need the professional experience. They need distance from their own experience in order to be able to look at another and capacitate them and bring out the best in them, rather than just preach and tell them what they need to do and what they should do and should not do. So the unhealed healer, I find, is very common, because that's kind of the transference that happens, the transference of energy, the transference of conflict, of power dynamics that arise. And speaking of power dynamics, of course there is power and self-importance that's attached to someone who is a teacher versus someone who's asking the questions and seeking the answers. So even to be in a position to provide answers is sort of an elevated space in the consciousness. We look up to someone from where? From down below. It's sort of a vertical placement. How is a more horizontal placement possible? And also, let's talk about the money issue. I feel like the fees that are being charged is completely out of context and out of proportion. My critique of corporate America is that it's reached this sort of monstrosity of the CEO making 50 times or 100 times more than the salaried wage workers, and that's unacceptable. I mean, that's inequality in sort of the most crude variety of it, you know, dimension. And I feel a similar reality is being created by some of these professions like online coaching and people that want to charge $1,000 an hour that do not question where they're operating from, which countries. You know, for example, why should a coach make $1,000 an hour if a farmer makes $2 an hour in Costa Rica, where we are right now? I'm not saying that we need to constantly downgrade and doubt ourselves and shame ourselves and feel uncomfortable about making more than what a farmer makes, but there's still some kind of contextual understanding of value and true price for what we do. And I think that's just completely missing in today's online space. You know, anyone can name their price and charge whatever they want, and it's imbalanced. And another thing I wanted to mention is sort of like, this is the money thing is sort of the law of attraction gone wild. Basically, it's this idea of abundance as if abundance is not coming from another person's pocket, as if it doesn't have a direct correlation to someone else's budget and ability to pay for a service. It's an abstraction of abundance and money and price and value, and it's very narcissistic. It's like, whatever I think I deserve is what I'm going to announce that I'm worth, and you cannot question that because it's completely arbitrary anyway. So these are some of the things I wanted to mention. I hope there's some nuggets for you to respond to, and I hope we can continue on the journey. Like I said, I'm going to make a project, a different Facebook page. I'm still crystallizing it in my mind in terms of what I'm going to call it, but I'm already generating content in that direction, and it's not going to focus just on coaching or anything like that. It's going to focus on all the different ways in which we are shaped by our online interactions, by mass media, by different propaganda machines. I will talk a little bit about my experience with that, my academic background, and why I'm interested to surface this kind of dialogue. So thanks for listening again.